Chapter 1741, The Fourth Wave of Attack. Not good. How is this possible? The remaining four Sir Gods were extremely terrified, and they no longer had a relaxed expression like before. It should be known that they had even used the trump card killing formation of 9 cuts that they had prepared. However, in the end, Jian Wushuang had killed Mo Ying in the killing formation of 9 cuts. How can this happen? How can he disregard the killing formation of 9 cuts and kill Mo Ying? What kind of technique is this? The four Sir Gods were filled with doubt. However, they did not know that the moon-picking skill that Jian Wushuang had used was the strongest secret skill of the ancient God clan, and it was really a very remarkable ability. This secret skill made use of the power of the universe, space, and time. Moreover, no matter where it was, as long as space and time existed in the piece of void, Jian Wushuang could use it. The killing formation of 9 cuts could indeed block all kinds of attacks. However, these attacks were merely material-based attacks. As for the moon-picking skill, which was a secret skill which made use of the universe, space, and time, the killing formation of 9 cuts was totally unable to block it. With the death of Mo Ying, the killing formation of 9 cuts had collapsed, and the devil 9 cuts with a great amount of murderous intent and power had dissipated at once. Jian Wushuang glowed with murderous intent. With a shrill cry, the 2 Hongjun golden swords which Jian Wushuang controlled turned into 2 shooting stars and moved with frightening speed. They then pierced the void and headed to the 4 Sir Gods with lightning speed. Upon seeing that, the 4 Sir Gods revealed terrified expressions in succession. Even the killing formation of 9 cuts had been broken through. As such, the fighting capabilities of Jian Wushuang, who had gone all out, were not something that the 4 of them could stop. Run! Without hesitation, the 4 Sir Gods started to escape. After all, they were all Sir God experts. Moreover, they were considered outstanding among the Sir Gods. If the 4 of them really wanted to escape, it would be difficult for Jian Wushuang to get all of them to stay. Even though it was not possible to get the 4 Sir Gods to stay, there was one person that Jian Wushuang absolutely had to keep. This person was Lei Chao. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang's body moved crazily, and his dark golden eyes stared persistently at Lei Chao, who was standing in the void. At that time, Lei Chao did not have a fearful expression at all. Since his soul had been controlled, he did not have his own consciousness since a long time ago. Hence, he was no different from being dead. Lei Chao! Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and grief flashed in his heart. However, even more determination flashed in his heart. I will definitely avenge you. Please leave peacefully. Jian Wushuang spoke softly and pointed out one of his fingers from his right hand. A flittering light shot out, and its speed was so fast that it was not an attack that Lei Chao could dodge. Moreover, Lei Chao did not dodge at all. The flittering light pierced through the space between Lei Chao's eyebrows and took his life. Jian Wushuang appeared beside Lei Chao. With a swing of his hands, he put Lei Chao's lifeless body into his Qian Kuan ring. After finishing that, Jian Wushuang sighed deeply, and his heart felt extremely heavy. As Lei Chao's consciousness had been controlled, he was as good as dead. If he were to continue living like a puppet, it would be a humiliation and torture to him. As such, after knowing that, Jian Wushuang had made up his mind a long time ago to free Lei Chao. Akron Palace. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and his eyes were filled with an infinite amount of murderous intent and fury. Jian Wushuang, the world has always been cruel. Please try to get over this. Moreover, now is not the time for you to grieve. The King of Venomous Worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind. I know. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and his eyes were icy cold. The King of Venomous Worms was right. The current moment was not the time for him to grieve, because he himself could be killed by someone at any time. The Akron Palace's way of doing things has always been very secretive, and they will not take action easily. However, the moment they take action, they will definitely have absolute confidence. Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted. However, what I have come across so far is unable to force me into a hopeless situation. The Akron Palace has definitely arranged for something else. Since entering the Dark Storm, Jian Wushuang had encountered 3 waves of danger. The first wave was the assassination attempt by the ugly-looking woman at the start. The assassination was extremely frightening and Jian Wushuang was almost killed. The second wave came from Lei Chao where he tossed 2 god-destroying pearls abruptly. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang had always been careful and he was prepared for it. If not, he would have ended up in an extremely miserable state. As for the third wave, it was the 5 Sir Gods attacking at the same time and they even had used the killing formation of 9 cuts. These 3 waves of danger were extremely perilous and they had indeed forced Jian Wushuang to go all out by making him unleash many of his trump cards and techniques. However, such an extent was still not considered perfectly safe. Hence, Jian Wushuang could confirm that the Akron Palace still had the 4th wave of attack. The 4th wave of attack would be even more dangerous than the 3 waves of attacks from before. What will the 4th wave of attack be? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. In no time, he knew about it. Jian Wushuang was still standing at the battlefield from before, which was inside the dark storm. As for the 4 Sir Gods who deployed the killing formation of 9 cuts to kill him, they had escaped originally. However, at that time, they headed toward Jian Wushuang again. Moreover, it was not just the 4 of them. At the center of the 4 of them, there was a shadow which was covered by a crimson robe. Under the escort of the 4 Sir Gods, the crimson-robed man walked out slowly and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang openly. After that, he stopped moving. At that moment, Jian Wushuang's expression became unusually ugly. An emperor god. An emperor god expert. The corners of Jian Wushuang's mouth were a bit distorted and he could not help but exclaim in admiration. As expected of the Akron Palace. They would not take action easily. However, if they were to take action, they would definitely not fail. This rumor was really true. After sending 5 Sir Gods to team up and deploy the killing formation of 9 cuts, it was still not enough. They had actually secretly arranged for another Emperor God. It was an Emperor God. It was the level of the Star Palace Master as well as King Luo Zhan who was an 8-star ancient god. Although there seemed to be only 1 step between an Emperor God and a Sir God, the gap between them was not smaller than the gap between a real god and Sir God. For example, the Devil 9 cuts from before, which was only just created with 5 Sir Gods teaming up under the aid of the killing formation of 9 cuts, possessed the fighting capabilities of an Emperor God. However, the Devil 9 cuts had only achieved the level of an Emperor God in terms of strength, power, and other areas. However, when comparing close quarters techniques, trump cards, and secret skills, it was completely incomparable to an actual Emperor God. However, even though that was the case, it was still not something that Jian Wushuang could fight with. He could only rely on his own close quarters combat abilities to deal with the Devil 9 cuts. After that, he had found an opportunity to kill Mo Ying, who had deployed the formation. With that, the Devil 9 cuts had dissipated by itself. As for a real Emperor God expert, he was many times stronger than the Devil 9 cuts. Moreover, the Emperor God in front of him did not look normal. Looks like this time around, it will not be as simple as just going all out. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and with a flip of his palm, a picture scroll appeared in his hands. As Jian Wushuang tossed the picture scroll into the void, the big universe started to undergo changes right away. Chapter 1742, Emperor God Shui Jiu 5 Sir Gods teamed up and set up the killing formation of 9 cuts but couldn't kill you. On the contrary, you killed one of us instead. Jian Wushuang, you're much stronger than we, Akron Palace, imagined. Luckily, we of Akron Palace have prepared room for a maneuver. A creepy and hoarse voice was heard from the person in the crimson robe. As his voice reverberated, the person in the crimson robe flipped his palm and took out a crimson token. The crimson token gave out a strange aura. As the person in the crimson robe clenched, pack, the token broke and a billowing strength covered Jian Wushuang instantly. This is. Jian Wushuang's eyes fixed and his consciousness slowly immersed. It was as though he almost fell asleep. Jian Wushuang, quickly, wake up. This is a soul control trick. Quickly wake up. King of Venomous Worms' roar of fear and anger rang in Jian Wushuang's head. The vigorous soul fire in Jian Wushuang's sea of consciousness was burning and there was a sharp ache that suddenly hit him. Jian Wushuang's eyes dilated with horror and his features turned ferocious. You want to conduct soul control on me? Dream. Jian Wushuang was roaring in madness as he tried to shake off the unique situation. After a while, everything settled down. Jian Wushuang continued to stand there as he panted. His face grew unusually solemn. It seems like I failed. The person in the crimson robe glanced at Jian Wushuang and he sneered, but that's right. After all, he's an inverse cultivator. He nurtured his soul fire long ago. He naturally wouldn't be as easy to control as Lei Chao. Beastard, there was billowing murderous intention in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He could tell that Lei Chao was soul-controlled by the person in the crimson robe before him. However, soul control wasn't something he could perform, and it was only contained in the token. The person in the crimson robe only played a guiding role. To be able to save a soul attack in a token and activate it by another person, and it still could control Lei Chao, who is an expert on real god ranking list. The person who performed the soul control is much stronger than I imagined, King of Venomous Worms said. Previously, King of Venomous Worms had thought the expert who performed soul control would be an emperor god who was good at soul attacks. However, from the looks of it, he wouldn't be an ordinary emperor god. As I couldn't soul control you, I have to kill you personally. The person in the crimson smiled leisurely, and there was another crimson trident in his hand. Go! The person in the crimson robe waved his hand, and the crimson trident quivered suddenly and charged at Jian Wushuang. The stab brought about boundless power of the universe, and crimson light flooded in. It was terrifyingly dark. Jian Wushuang felt that he was locked in on by the trident. No matter how he dodged, even if he ran to the end of the world, he wouldn't be able to dodge the trident's attack. In particular, the terrifying power that the trident contained made Jian Wushuang's hair stand. Ancient God unique skill, 8 divine mountains. Jian Wushuang bellowed, and the divine power in his body flowed out. He broke 3 ancient god stars, and the increased boundless ancient god power had yet to disperse. But then, it was venting out like a tsunami. Bang! 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 8 lofty golden sacred mountains appeared from nowhere. Every sacred mountain was lofty and far bigger than before. It formed 8 layers of barriers in front of Jian Wushuang. It was the strongest defense unique skill of ancient god tribe. It was performed by Jian Wushuang after he broke 3 stars. It was powerful enough for a Sir God to feel hopeless. However, the crimson trident hit the 8 golden sacred mountains directly. Bang! 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 8 continuous bangs, and the 8 lofty sacred mountains only hindered the trident for a while before it pierced them. The crimson trident that contained shocking power flew at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's face changed. Then, there was Siri that shot out like lightning. King of Venomous Worms' body reappeared again and instantly formed a huge net. Hong! The huge net shattered and countless Siri strangled into pieces. There were parts of King of Venomous Worms' body that were torn apart as well. However, the trident's power remained as it flew at Jian Wushuang. There was a chilly gleam in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He gripped Blood Mountain's sword in his hand tightly, then a boundless divine power flowed out and he slashed. Dang! There was a loud thud and Jian Wushuang's body shook vigorously. Blood Mountain's sword nearly fell out of his hand as he moved backwards from the impact. He took a dozen steps back before he steadied himself again. After he stopped, there was blood flowing out of the corner of his mouth. He's too strong. This is the power of an emperor god? Jian Wushuang was astonished. He gave his all and broke 3 stars to perform 8 divine mountains. However, they were instantly pierced while the defense skill that King of Venomous Worms had performed was broken down directly as well. Then, the stroke that he had cast with full force flew off as well and he was injured. It was merely a casual hit by the person in the crimson robe. His one hit was so powerful? No way. An ordinary emperor god won't be this powerful. He is definitely an expert among emperor gods. King of Venomous Worms' voice was heard in Jian Wushuang's head and his voice was solemn. Experts among emperor gods? Jian Wushuang muttered. He subconsciously looked at the crimson trident in the person in the crimson robe's hand. Then, his eyes dilated with shock. An emperor god using a crimson trident? And it is so powerful. Xue Jiyu. You are emperor god Xue Jiyu. Jian Wushuang shouted. It seems like you recognized me. The person in the crimson robe let out a burst of strange laughter but didn't deny it. It's really him. Jian Wushuang's face immediately grew grave. He had been in Sanctuary Alliance for so long, and he had a simple understanding of the Almighty's in eternal chaotic world. He did that so that when he was wandering outside, he could identify those who were more powerful and make a move earlier, in order to minimize the possibility of having a conflict. Among the Almighty's in eternal chaotic world, there was Emperor God Xue Jiyu. Emperor Xue Jiyu kept himself to himself, and he was evil in disposition. He was truly a devil, but he happened to be terrifyingly powerful. Among Emperor gods, he wasn't at the top, but he was in the middle upper range. The divine weapon that Emperor God Xue Jiyu was using was the Crimson Trident. He was the only one among Emperor gods in eternal chaotic world that used a strange divine weapon like the Crimson Trident. Hence, when Jian Wushuang saw the Crimson Trident, he recognized him immediately. No wonder Emperor God Xue Jiyu rejected Sanctuary Alliance's invitation so many times, and he was even too lazy to bother with Sanctuary Alliance. He turned out to be Akron Palace's man. Jian Wushuang was terrified and angry. Chapter 1743. A fight to the death. Since you have recognized me, all the more you have to die. Emperor God Xue Gu's eyes were filled with an infinite amount of murderous intent. He was someone from the Akron Palace, and this was a secret that no one knew. However, at that time, Jian Wushuang knew about it. Boom! A frightening aura rose from Emperor God Xue Gu's body, and the whole universe turned into a sea of blood that was filled with countless skeletons in an instant. As for Emperor God Xue Jiyu, he was the emperor who ruled the sea of blood. He was holding his Crimson Trident with one hand tightly. Similarly, the trident was filled with a great amount of vigor, and the void shook wildly. After that, the Crimson Trident attacked again. This time around, when the Crimson Trident attacked, it increased in size at the same time, and it looked like a trident that could destroy the world. Comparing powers, it was many times stronger than before. Upon seeing that, an unprecedented amount of madness glowed within Jian Wushuang's eyes. His ancient god body was standing in the void proudly. At that moment, his right hand slapped his own forehead again. It should be known that of the 6 ancient god stars in the space between his eyebrows, he had already destroyed 3 of them previously. The star destruction skill was a secret skill used by ancient gods to allow them to go all out. If only 1 or 2 stars were destroyed, it would be easy to restore them. However, if 3 stars were destroyed, it would be more difficult to restore them. However, slap, slap, slap. Sounds that sounded like constellations bursting could be heard repeatedly. At that moment, the 3 remaining ancient god stars in the space between Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were destroyed at the same time. In addition to the 3 stars that had been destroyed previously, Jian Wushuang had destroyed all 6 stars. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang had given his all. He wanted to fight to the death.
Come?
A furious roar came out of Jian Wushuang's mouth, and it reverberated across the big universe. With all 6 stars destroyed, Jian Wushuang's ancient god power rose again to a completely new level instantly. Such a stage, combined with Jian Wushuang's stage 2 ultimate real god's divine power, made his divine power similar to that of a normal emperor god. Rumble, a great amount of divine power moved about, and it gathered at the index finger of Jian Wushuang's right hand. At that time, the index finger of his right hand had completely become a crystal jade, and the crystal jade was dark gold in color. Ancient God's 7th finger. Vault of Heaven's finger. Jian Wushuang opened his mouth, and he was extremely imposing. All of a sudden, the index finger of his right hand, which had completely changed into a crystal jade, was pointed. The instant it was pointed out, the void in front of him burst open, and a space vortex which covered tens of thousands of miles appeared from it. The space vortex was twisting everything in the universe, and even the dark storm at the side twisted mercilessly. Russell, more than half of the space storm, which originally covered the triangular island, was twisted instantly. The ancient god's finger, which was one of the ancient god clan's 4 unique skills, contained a total of 9 fingers, and every finger was more shocking than before. Just the 6th finger, the sun corrosion finger, was already earth-shaking. For the 7th finger, it would be very difficult for even 7-star ancient gods to use it under normal circumstances. Similarly, Jian Wushuang could not use it previously. It was not until all his 6 stars were destroyed and that his ancient god power rose greatly like never before that he could use the 7th finger for real. The vault of heaven's finger. A finger that could destroy the vault of heaven. A giant, dark golden finger came out from the space vortex which covered tens of thousands of miles, and it clashed head-on with the incoming crimson trident which had expanded crazily right away. With the clash, there were no violent booming sounds like before. However, the instant both attacks clashed, millions of miles of the surrounding void were torn apart into pieces. For example, the dark storm which had already been hit to the point that it almost fell apart was torn into pieces at that moment. In addition, the whole triangular island was completely exposed. In the void, two shocking powers were still opposing each other crazily. However, all of a sudden, boom! A great amount of aura descended from the void on top abruptly. Emperor God Xuegu's expression changed. After that, he raised his head abruptly and saw that the vault of heaven on top had undergone some changes for some reason. The vault of heaven had already changed into an extremely beautiful world. The world contained mountains, rivers, birds singing, and the fragrance of flowers. The most eye-catching thing was the 9 lofty continents that existed within the world. For the 9 lofty continents, each of them was extremely huge and vast, and the supreme aura that it emitted caused even Emperor God Xuegu to be slightly fearful. This is a chaos divine treasure? Emperor God Xuegu's eyes shrank. Chaos divine treasures were the most powerful and valuable treasures in the eternal chaotic world. Even almighties and real gods did not have the right to possess them. For example, many Sir Gods, which included some Sir Gods with weaker abilities, did not have the right to possess a chaos divine treasure. As for Emperor God Xuegu himself, he possessed a chaos divine treasure, and it was the crimson trident in his hands. The trident was extremely powerful, and with its power, Emperor God Xuegu could be said to be someone powerful among the Emperor Gods. However, the trident was merely an attack-type divine weapon. Among many kinds of divine weapons, attack-type divine weapons were no doubt worth the least. However, the extremely beautiful continent which had appeared on top had caused Emperor God Xuegu's eyes to become scorching hot. It's indeed a chaos divine treasure. Moreover, it's a kind of chaos divine treasure that is extremely special, and it is worth so much that it is shocking. Emperor God Xuegu shook. He knew how valuable chaos divine treasures were. For his trident, he had paid a huge price for it. He had obtained it by luck after experiencing many life and death situations when he had entered a battlefield deep inside the second layer. Even though it was only an attack-type divine weapon, it was still enough to make many almighties envious of him. However, for the chaos divine treasure that Jian Wushuang took out, looking at its worth alone, it was worth at least 10 times more than his crimson trident. Ha ha, this is really not a wasted trip. Emperor God Xuegu was extremely excited. His eyes, which were looking at Jian Wushuang, became filled with even more murderous intent. You wish to kill me and snatch my treasure away? Jian Wushuang could see through Emperor God Xuegu's thoughts completely, and he grinned hideously. That will depend on whether you can survive this. Mountain River Map. Mountain River as palm and 9 province as seal. Jian Wushuang uttered every word with a pause, and every word contained a special demonic power. In the vast vault of heaven, within the world of the picture scroll, which contained a total of 9 lofty continents, one of the continents was as if it were completely alive, and it freed itself from the world of the picture scroll. After that, it descended slowly. Rumble the universe shook, and all beings trembled with fear. This power, even if it were Emperor God Xuegu, when he saw the continent that was descending, his eyes became filled with fear. 9 province of the universe, Qing province as the seal. First seal, split the heavens. Boom! The lofty continent descended completely. Mountain River Map, the first seal of the 9 seals of 9 province had descended. In a split second, all the living creatures in the world submitted themselves. Chapter 1744, Life and Death in a Split Second. Haha, interesting. There was excitement shimmering in Emperor God Xuegu's eyes. He noticed the terrifying power contained in the lofty continent. Not only was he not afraid, he was filled with excitement. The stronger the power of the lofty continent represented, the more amazing the chaos divine treasure was. And he definitely has to get a hold of the chaos divine treasure. Secret skill of bloodthirst, ternary in one breath. Emperor God roared, and there were 3 huge, lofty shadows of exotic beast. The three shadows were unique, but they shared a similarity. They were all soaring with rage. The crimson trident in his hand let out three different powers simultaneously. Suddenly, the power burst out. Heaven and earth were instantly silent. In the unprecedented silence, the lofty continent that was descending from the sky collided with the crimson trident. Rumble. Heaven fell and the earth was raised. The huge triangle island below Jian Wushuang and Emperor God Xue Jiyu started falling and immersed under the sea. The island vanished into thin air along with the dark storm. The four figures in black robe were in the void far away. They felt the collision of two terrifying power, and the four gods revealed a terrified expression. However, just as Jian Wushuang exchanged blows with Emperor God Xue Jiyu using Mountain River Map, at the bottom of the sea in the vast Buddhist Demon Sea, a young man's consciousness, which was asleep for God knows how long, suddenly woke up with a start. This is the aura of Nine-Province Continent. Nine-Province Continent that was refined and made into treasure many years ago. It was in the hands of Seven-Star Black Sect and it was named Mountain River Map. Seven-Star Black Sect's Mountain River Map appeared here? Ha ha, God is helping me. Go, kill all of the nonentities and bring back all their treasures. An ancient voice spoke and a black shadow departed from the deep ends of Buddhist Demon Sea at an unbelievably fast speed in the direction of Jian Wushuang and Emperor God Xue Jiyu. They remained in the void above the Triangle Island, but the Triangle Island had already vanished into thin air. The two terrifying power were clashed vigorously and shook the earth. But suddenly, the three rays of crimson light burst out like three bloody suns that swept out all hindrances. The lofty continent that descended from the scroll painting world, although it was magnificent, cracked into three parts under the massive hit of three bloody suns and shattered completely. The sight made Jian Wushuang's expression grow distressed. He didn't perform Mountain River Map often, but every time he performed it, it never disappointed him. But then, the first seal of Mountain River Map that he had performed with his all was broken apart by his enemy. Emperor God Xue Jiyu lives up to his name. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but compliment. However, he didn't feel hopeless. 9 province 9 seals, and he was merely performing the first seal then. One should know that his divine power was great and he had already broken 6 ancient god stars. Then, he was already qualified to perform the second seal. The last trump card. Jian Wushuang's eyes were flashing and he fixed his gaze upon Emperor God Xue Jiyu. At the next moment, the vast power of stars instantly swept out from his body. Secret Skills of Star Palace was finally cast. Secret Skills of Star Palace, River Mountain Map, Star Destruction Skill were all his biggest trump cards. He wouldn't perform those techniques hastily. But then, Jian Wushuang spared nothing. 9 Province of the Universe, U Province as the seal, hack the earth. Terrifying divine power billowed. Rumble. Heaven and earth shook vigorously. From the sky in the beautiful scroll painting, there was another lofty continent that descended. The lofty continent was much bigger than the first. It was much loftier and more imposing. It was far beyond the first piece of the continent, far stronger. 9 province 9 seals, first split the heavens, secondly hack the earth. One was supposed to be stronger than another seal. Most importantly, the second seal was backed up with the power of stars. Jian Wushuang performed the second episode of Secret Skill of Star Palace with all his strength. In an instant, the order of Heaven Way seemed to be breaking apart. Under the Hack the Earth seal, Emperor God Xue Jiyu, who had been smiling madly, finally stiffened. In the distant void, the 4 God experts turned pale. Even though they were far away, they could feel the power contained in the Hack the Earth seal. The power struck fear in them and they were shivering hopelessly. It's impossible for him to be that strong. Emperor God Xue Gu's hair instantly stood and his face distorted in agony. Hong! 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 Emperor God Xue Gu's body let out 3 roars. Then, he spat a mouthful of blood. His blood wasn't red but a scalding gold. The mouthful of scalding gold blood fell onto his crimson trident. Then, the crimson trident instantly became unusually violent. Drive weapon with blood. Slaughter a god with 100 ghosts. Secret skill. Ternary splits heaven and earth. Hong! A terrifying power suddenly exploded from the crimson trident. Emperor God Shui God had boundless divine power and energy flow out of his body. Obviously, Emperor God Shui Jiyu gave his all to kill. A loud roar that sounded like it was outside the highest heavens struck fear into them. The three tips of the crimson trident flooded with crimson light. The crimson trident suddenly increased in size. It was originally the size of an ordinary divine weapon, but it grew in size by tens of thousands of times and became an unbelievable mountain. The three resplendent yet enchanting crimson lights burst out and hit the lofty continent that descended brutally. Life or death depends on this hit. Jian Wushuang looked determined, and there was unprecedented insanity on his face. He already flashed all his trump cards and skills. He had to brew his strongest hit. If the hit were to kill Emperor God Shui Jiyu, he would be able to live. On the contrary, if Emperor God Shui Jiyu were to survive the hit, he would definitely die. Emperor God Shui Jiyu was as mad as he was. He obviously knew of the situation as well. Their lives and deaths were decided by the last hit. It was either life or death in a split second. In the void, the crimson trident that grew to the size of a mountain collided with the lofty continent that descended. Bang! The space-time instantly paused, the yin and yang crisscrossed, and the universe fell apart. A black hole that covered the expanse of 1,000,000 miles appeared from nowhere. The black hole swallowed everything in the universe with no mercy. The four Sir Gods afar revealed an unprecedentedly terrified expression in that moment, as they could feel the horror of the black hole. If they weren't far off, the black hole could totally strangle them to death. Chapter 1745. Very dissatisfied, the space black hole which spread across millions of miles disappeared, and the universe regained its peace gradually. Everything had come to an end. Jian Wushuang was standing at the void, and he had a ghastly pale expression. The level of the mountain river map was too high. If he had only unleashed the first move, it would still be all right. However, Jian Wushuang had unleashed the second move at all costs. Although he had unleashed it forcefully, it still placed a huge burden on his body. The current him only felt that all his internal organs were damaged and he was in extreme pain. However, Jian Wushuang couldn't care less about his own injuries. His eyes were glowing brilliantly, and he was staring persistently at the void in front of him. He was looking at the position that Emperor God Shui Jiyu was in previously. When he saw the void and that Emperor God Shui Gu's body was still standing there, his body shook fiercely. Not dead? Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists, and he was filled with an infinite amount of dissatisfaction. He had already given it his all by unleashing all his trump cards as well as techniques and staking everything on one attack. However, in the end, Emperor God Shui Jiyu was still not dead yet. As expected of an Emperor God expert, Jian Wushuang laughed with grief. Jian Wushuang, run away quickly. The king of venomous worms' fierce roar echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind. However, Jian Wushuang was in agony. When did he not wish to run away? If he were able to run away, he would have done so a long time ago. If not, why would he stay behind and stake everything on one attack to fight it out with Emperor God Shui Jiyu? The most important thing was that it was impossible for him to run away. His abilities were not too bad, and if he were to use the secret skill of Dragon Blood, his speed would surpass many Sir Gods. However, in front of an Emperor God, his speed was considered insignificant. He also knew that Emperor God Shui Jiyu had always been proficient in speed to begin with. Moreover, the Crimson Trident in Emperor God Shui Gu's hands could lock onto time and space. Hence, this would absolutely not give him any opportunity to escape. Under such circumstances, there was no way for him to escape. There was no way previously. At present, there was no way as well. In front of Jian Wushuang, Emperor God Shui Jiyu was indeed not dead. However, he looked extremely miserable. The crimson robe on his body was filled with blood, his face was deathly pale like paper, and his aura had decreased greatly. It was obvious that he was seriously injured as well. However, under such circumstances, Emperor God Shui Jiyu was neither terrified nor furious. Instead, he was extremely excited and delighted. Ha ha! Jian Wushuang, I really did not expect you to actually have such a nature-defying treasure. You are merely a real god. To allow a real god to unleash such frightening power to the point that it almost killed me, this treasure is 100 times more valuable than my trident. No, it's 1,000 times, 10,000 times. I am very grateful to you for giving me such a wonderful treasure. Hence, I will let you die immediately." Emperor God Shuijiyu was roaring madly, and the crimson trident in his hands glowed with a dazzling scarlet color. He then moved his legs and approached Jian Wushuang slowly. "Is this the end?" Jian Wushuang muttered, and his eyes were filled with hopelessness. The king of venomous worms, who was in his body, went silent as well. The king of venomous worms knew that Jian Wushuang had already reached his limit. He had already unleashed all his moves and trump cards. In addition, the star power, as well as the power he gained from destroying all his 6 ancient god stars, were completely depleted from using the seal back then. If the current him were to face Emperor God Shuijiyu again, he would not have any power to resist. However, all of a sudden, "Wait!" The king of venomous worms gave a shrill cry. Jian Wushuang's eyes also shrank fiercely, and he looked at Emperor God Shuijiyu. All of a sudden, the black and boundless sea surface behind Emperor God Shuijiyu rose. A black shadow then appeared out of thin air, and it was right behind Emperor God Shuijiyu. Emperor God Shuijiyu seemed to have noticed it as well, and he turned his body immediately. After turning his body, his eyes became filled with shock. What he saw was a large, fierce-looking mouth that had already opened. The fierce-looking mouth contained 2 sharp, cold, and long protruding teeth. Moreover, the big mouth was right in front of him, and it headed toward him. "No!" Emperor God Shuijiyu roared extremely loudly like never before. Although he tried to struggle with all his might to escape, he was still unable to. When the fierce-looking mouth closed, Emperor God Shuigu's body disappeared completely, and what replaced him was a huge, pitch-black head. The head was filled with black scales, and it looked like a dragon as well as a snake at the same time. In addition, there was also 1 horn on its head. "This is a flood dragon from the ancient past." A terrified and astonished voice came from the king of venomous worms. The king of venomous worms was a full-foot plenilune, which was a supreme existence of the plenilune clan. However, when it saw the pitch-black enormous monster in front of it, it was horrified from the bottom of its heart. A flood dragon from the ancient past. An extremely frightening existence. As soon as it appeared, there was no room for Emperor God Shuijiyu to struggle at all, and he was killed right away. Such a scene was seen clearly by Jian Wushuang and the 4 Sir Gods who were in a void not too far away. At once, the 5 of them became extremely frightened. "Run! Run away quickly! There is no room for Emperor God Shuijiyu to struggle at all. This is too frightening." The 4 black-robed Sir Gods did not hesitate at all, and they turned around to escape madly at once. All of them had also unleashed their speed to the best of their abilities. However, the moment they moved, the giant head of the flood dragon which had appeared from the sea surface also turned around at once. At the same time, it opened its big mouth again. Buzz! Shockingly cold air spread across the area and covered the whole universe in an instant. It had also covered the 4 Sir Gods. Originally, the 4 Sir Gods were escaping with all their might. Moreover, the 4 of them had split up. However, all of a sudden, the 4 of them stopped moving in midair. The 4 of them opened their eyes wide, and they were filled with an infinite amount of fear. However, a layer of frost had already covered their bodies, and the frost spread continuously. In the end, the 4 of them were turned into ice sculptures. When a simple air current passed by, the 4 ice sculptures broke into pieces at once and dissipated across the universe. With just one face-off, not even a fragment of the 4 Sir Gods who had besieged Jian Wushuang previously remained. After that, the giant head of the ancient flood dragon looked at Jian Wushuang fiercely. The pair of eyes on its head, which were glowing with a thin layer of grey light, then locked on to Jian Wushuang hastily like 2 electric arcs. Murderous intent also flashed past its eyes. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang did not see how the flood dragon moved at all. However, the flood dragon had already appeared in front of him. At the same time, it opened its fierce-looking mouth again, and its target this time around was Jian Wushuang. Just like Emperor God Shuijiyu, Jian Wushuang did his best to escape. However, at the instant the flood dragon opened its mouth, Jian Wushuang realized that the space and time that he was in had been completely sealed off. His body was also frozen, and he could not move at all. He could only look on as the head of the flood dragon headed toward him. "Am I going to die?" Jian Wushuang murmured, Since I am about to die, it is better for me to die in the hands of this ancient flood dragon rather than at the hands of the experts of the Akron Palace. However, it's a pity that I have not found Lang Rushue and rescued Xianxia yet. In addition, I have also not found out about Master's real identity, and I'm going to die just like this. How dissatisfying. Chapter 1746. Armageddon Bang. The shockingly loud bang wasn't the noise from Jian Wushuang being eaten by the ancient flood dragon. It was the noise of a fierce hit on the flood dragon's head. It then immersed itself under the sea. What? Jian Wushuang, who was originally hopeless, opened his eyes widely and watched everything that happened before his eyes in shock. He saw a blurry figure in the void before him. The figure was about 10,000 zhong tall. It was enormously huge. Although he couldn't see the appearance clearly, he reckoned that it should be an elderly from the outline of the figure. But who was the elderly? When did he appear? Roar! An angry roar that sounded like a dragon's roar shook heaven and earth vigorously. It stirred up billowing waves in the entire surface of Dark Sea region, and the ancient flood dragon revealed itself. Its huge body was not only one size bigger than King of Venomous Worm, the huge head was extremely ferocious, while its faint grey pupils were covered in coldness and murderous intention, and it was looking at the huge shadow that was 10,000 zhong tall. He, little thing. You do not deserve to make me take action personally. Let the one behind you come out. The blurry shadow that embodied an elderly let out a hearty laugh. His laughter was heard from all directions, and it contained a unique magic power. As his voice stopped, crack! In the vast void, there was suddenly a huge black hand that pierced through. It was huge and towering like a boundless mountain. Then, a shadow that was 10,000 zhong tall stepped out of the black hole and stood opposite the blurry elderly in the distance. The moment the black shadow appeared, the ancient flood dragon that was giving out a chilliness immediately became tame. Obviously, the black shadow was the master of the ancient flood dragon. These. What are all these? Jian Wushuang was surprised. He knew clearly that the ancient flood dragon could kill an emperor god easily, and it was not something he could match evenly. But then, there were suddenly two blurry shadows that were 10,000 zhong tall and much scarier than the ancient flood dragon. The two shadows were obviously substantiated with consciousness, but not their original bodies. However, as they stood there, Jian Wushuang felt that besides Long Qi and his master that he had come across in the independent space in the 8th layer back then, there was no one in the whole world that could win against him. But why would the shadows of the superb existences suddenly appear in Buddhist Demon Sea? Jian Wushuang was quivering in fear, and he stayed behind the shadow of the elderly. He didn't dare to move an inch. King of Venomous Worms in his body was frightened and remained silent too. One-star man, you old man, you are awakened too. The blurry shadow said under black armor while the ancient flood dragon stayed by his side. His deep voice reverberated in Buddhist Demon Sea, and it stirred stormy waves all over Buddhist Demon Sea. Ha, in the same region, as you are awakened, how can I continue to stay asleep? The blurry shadow that the elder took the form of, also known as the one-star man, burst out into a hearty laugh. So what if you woke up? I'm killing these few non-entities. What does it have to do with you? The shadow in black armor asked coldly. You can kill anyone else, but the young man behind me has Mountain River Map and he knows the secret skill of 7-star. He definitely shared a relationship with 7-star Black Sect. Do you think I'll let you kill him? One-star man laughed. You won't, and I can't, kill him? The shadow in a black armor let his murderous intention bellow. As he finished his sentence, he took a huge stride forward. With just one step, Jian Wushuang felt as though he had traversed two different eras. The shadow in black armor appeared in front of the blurry shadow that the one-star man took the form of. Then, he simply punched. On the other hand, one-star man waved his hand casually. Bang! There was a loud bang and the universe broke apart. The huge sea that covered an expanse of tens of millions of miles instantly sunk in, and it sunk all the way down to the bottom of the sea. It even revealed the reefs in the seabed. There were countless tsunamis, and every single wave was more than 1,000,000 zhong high as it dispersed in all directions madly. Jian Wushuang was right in the middle of the tsunami, and he felt the tsunami shattering everything like breaking dead wood. It stirred a commotion up in his heart as well. Merely a brief hit had caused such unbelievable power. Just how strong were the two people that were fighting? The experts of Great Emperor level in eternal chaotic world were nothing. Jian Wushuang muttered. Plus, the two of them hadn't come in person but merely in the form of shadow that they had substantiated temporarily. Bang! 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 The roars spread over continuously, and every roar came with boundless waves. The vigorous battle between the two made the universe seem to pale into insignificance. If one wasn't the level of Great Emperor, he couldn't even think of getting involved in such a vigorous battle. Just like Jian Wushuang, forget about getting involved, he couldn't even open his eyes when he was in the boundless tsunami. He could only feel the boundless power explode madly. One-star man, you really want to go against me? An angry voice roared through the universe. Ha ha, so what if I go against you? It's not like we never fought before. Not only do I want to keep this young man alive, I also want to provide him with an opportunity to let him grow stronger faster. One-star man's voice was loud and clear. Young man, look closely. Jian Wushuang, who was in the boundless tsunami, forced his eyes open. As he opened his eyes, he happened to see a huge hand. A huge hand that seemed to press the entire sky, the entire universe. The huge hand was gray and it was blurry. Besides the boundless divine power that it contained, there was another kind of energy. The energy was the power of reincarnation. Constellation theurgy. Extermination palm of reincarnation. Rumble. The huge hand descended magnificently. Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded at the sight. He stared at the huge hand, and the huge hand continuously appeared in his head and continuously magnified in size. In the end, it was completely sealed in his memory. Hong! The power of the huge hand exploded and the shadow in black armor knelt down from the slab. The shadow dispersed slightly. B-starred. A roar with boundless rage spread and the shadow in black armor substantiated again. Black scale, kill that boy. The shadow in black armor roared while the ancient flood dragon that was fighting alongside him suddenly let out a chilly gleam. Then, the chilliness turned into an air current and froze the void. Then, it bypassed One-Star Man's huge shadow and shot at Jian Wushuang. Be careful! One-Star Man roared. Jian Wushuang's face changed. Chapter 1747. The power of a throw. Jian Wushuang had seen with his own eyes that when the ancient flood dragon had released cold air from its mouth, the cold air had annihilated the Forcer gods instantly. The cold air from the mouth of the ancient flood dragon was heading toward him. As its speed was too fast, Jian Wushuang had no way of dodging it, and he also did not have the ability to dodge it. The cold air covered his body instantly, and at that moment, it was as if the cold air wanted to freeze his body, mind, and consciousness completely. He then trembled with fear from the bottom of his heart. HMPH. Jian Wushuang snorted coldly. In such a situation which was of great concern to life and death, Jian Wushuang remained extremely calm like never before. His divine power rose madly, and it was as if a volcano had erupted. His divine power then blocked the corrosion from the coldness. The coldness was extremely powerful and it destroyed Jian Wushuang's divine power easily. However, Jian Wushuang had a great amount of divine power. Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator, and he had also achieved the limit of Stage 2 Ultimate Real God, where he had already precipitated a total of 99 Ultimate Divine Power Water Droplets. With 99 Ultimate Divine Power Water Droplets, the amount of divine power that he possessed was many times more than that of an Emperor God. With such a great amount of divine power appearing continuously to replace the dissipated divine power, it hindered the coldness madly. At the same time, it was also depleting the power of the coldness continuously. I must block it at all costs. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes tightly and he was roaring furiously in his heart. At the same time that his ultimate divine power was blocking the corrosion from the coldness, his divine power was also being depleted at a shocking speed. Such a rate of depletion was even faster than when he had unleashed the secret skill of dragon blood with his full power. After just a short amount of time, he had already depleted 90% of the ultimate divine power in his body. Finally, the coldness dissipated gradually. Jian Wushuang's body, which was close to being completely frozen, also turned back to normal slowly. I have blocked it. Jian Wushuang was panting heavily and he still had lingering fears. It was 90% of his divine power. Although he had such a vast amount of divine power, he had still depleted 90% of it in one go to block the coldness. However, if it was someone else, for example, for the 4 Sir Gods who were killed by the coldness of the ancient flood dragon, their divine power would be less than 1/100th of Jian Wushuang's divine power. Hence, they would absolutely be unable to block the corrosion from the coldness. If it were an emperor god, he would be unable to block it as well. Only Jian Wushuang could block it with his vast amount of divine power. Even though that was the case, under the corrosion of the coldness, his internal organs had sustained great damage like never before. In addition, his body and mind were totally exhausted. He then spit out a big mouthful of blood. His aura had become extremely weak and it was at rock bottom. He's actually not dead? The black-armored shadow could not help but be surprised. As for the ancient flood dragon under him, it gave a roar and it seemed to be furious. The 1-star man heaved a sigh of relief and said loudly, "Little kid, this battlefield is not a place that you can stay at. Let me send you out of here first. Don't resist." After speaking, a big hand from the giant shadow of the 1-star man was swung out and it headed toward Jian Wushuang straight away. Jian Wushuang naturally did not resist. Even if he wanted to resist, he did not have the ability to do so. In no time, he was grabbed by the 1-star man's big hand. After that, "Go!" The 1-star man gave a cry and his big hand exerted a great amount of strength as though he was throwing a lance and he threw Jian Wushuang out. A frightening amount of strength burst forth. Jian Wushuang then swept past the void and created a ray of light in his path. In a split second, he had disappeared from the battlefield. Upon seeing that, the black-armored shadow could not help but be extremely furious. "Old man, today, I shall have a proper fight with you." A furious voice could be heard from the black-armored shadow. "Ha ha, we are both shadows substantiated by consciousness and we are also under many restrictions. Who is afraid of whom?" The 1-star man was not fearful in the slightest. 2 earth-shaking experts continued to have an intense battle in the Buddhist Demon Sea. In no time, the whole Buddhist Demon Sea was on the verge of collapsing. Whoosh! A flittering light flew by at an extremely frightening speed. The violent sound of him sweeping past the sky was accompanied by an infinite amount of strong winds. Hence, Jian Wushuang was unable to open his eyes at all. The speed was too fast. It was countless times faster than the speed that Jian Wushuang had escaped with when he had unleashed the secret skill of dragon blood with his full power. It should be known that his current speed was not unleashed by him. Instead, the speed came from the 1-star man throwing him out. He even had no idea when he would stop. Thus, he could only resign himself to fate. Time passed by and close to 7 minutes' time had passed. However, Jian Wushuang's body had still not come to a stop yet. At that time, he was already extremely far away from the battlefield from before. At the void at the edge of the Buddhist Demon Sea in the 6th layer, there were 3 shadows moving about slowly. This is the edge of the Buddhist Demon Sea. The Buddhist Demon Sea is a great forbidden area of the 6th layer. While it is all right for us to travel at the edge, we must absolutely not enter it, a hale and hearty grey-robed old man explained. "I have heard of the Buddhist Demon Sea before as well. It is said that if a real god were to enter the Buddhist Demon Sea, he would definitely die. However, Sir God Qianlan, with your abilities, it should not be a problem for you to travel inside," the young man with slightly pale skin mocked. "Ha ha, don't flatter me. I am certain of my own abilities. For the Buddhist Demon Core, if there is no need to, it is better to not go in randomly." The hale grey-robed old man who was Sir God Qianlan from the Soaring Heaven King Palace laughed. As for the pale-skinned young man, he was real God Han Quan of the Soaring Heaven King Palace. As for the last person, he was another real god of the Soaring Heaven King Palace who was in the real god ranking list and his name was real God Ying Yun. 1 Sir God and 2 experts from the real god ranking list. With such a lineup in the 6th layer, as long as they did not look for trouble by going into a forbidden area like the Buddhist Demon Sea, they could probably go anywhere they wanted. Then, whoosh, all of a sudden, a sound of something sweeping in the sky could be heard. Moreover, the sound was getting louder and louder. "Hey!" Sir God Qianlan and the 2 other people looked at the source of the sound immediately. They then saw a flittering light being shot out from the Buddhist Demon Sea with a shocking speed by chance. The flittering light was moving at an extremely fast speed, and it swept past the void beside the three of them in an instant. This is... Sir God Qianlan and the two other people opened their eyes wide. What a fast speed! What is that flittering light from just now? Real God Han Quan said, dumbfounded. The speed of the flittering light was too fast. It was so fast that all of them, including Sir God Qianlan, did not manage to get a clear look at what exactly it was. With such a fast speed, and that it came from within the Buddhist demon sea, no matter what it is, we should follow it and take a look. Sir God Qianlan and the two other people started to move immediately. They followed the direction where the flittering light was shot to and headed over quickly. If the flittering light had maintained its frightening speed, with just the three of them, they would definitely be unable to catch up to it for their whole life. However, after the flittering light left the Buddhist demon sea, its speed began to decrease at once. In no time, the flittering light came to a complete stop at a piece of void. After the flittering light dissipated, a shadow appeared. This shadow was Jian Wushuang. Chapter 1748. Enemies on a narrow road. Jian Wushuang had just stopped moving and he immediately groaned, "Ugh." Then, he spat a mouthful of blood. He had forcefully performed the second seal of 9 province seal, hack the earth, earlier, and it was overloading his body, so his divine body was damaged. Then, the ancient flood dragon attacked him with chilliness to the point where his organs turned bad and his divine body was heavily injured. Then, he was thrown out by One-Star Man. Although he did that to save him and let him leave the battlefield, the power he had used was terrifying. During the process, his injury went from bad to worse. By then, he was in a miserable situation. Jian Wushuang resisted the sharp pain from his body as he looked around. After he looked around, his eyes dilated in shock. This is outside of Buddhist demon sea. Jian Wushuang found it unbelievable. One should know that the triangle island that had sunk and disappeared which he was on, although it wasn't the inland sea of Buddhist demon sea, was quite deep in the open sea. With Jian Wushuang's travel speed, from the triangle island to the outside of Buddhist demon sea, he would at least require 1 to 2 years' time. But then, it was just one throw. The power of one throw threw him out of the battlefield and out of Buddhist demon's sea directly. What kind of power was that? Which level of technique did he perform? One-Star Man Jian Wushuang remembered the name clearly. He knew that the reason why he could escape by the skin of his teeth was because of the assistance from One-Star Man, otherwise, he would have been eaten by the ancient flood dragon long ago. I wonder who the senior is. Judging from his looks, he seems to be related to 7-Star Black Sect and the person that was fighting with him. He might be an enemy of 7-Star Black Sect, Jian Wushuang muttered. Regardless, this favor has been engraved in my mind. One-Star Man had saved him and he had even given him an opportunity. The palm that he performed sealed in Jian Wushuang's brain. The palm would provide Jian Wushuang with immeasurable help. Jian Wushuang was still in deep thought, but suddenly, there were 3 flowing lights traveling over from the void afar. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. When he saw the 3 figures clearly, there was a chilly gleam in his eyes. Among the 3 persons, Jian Wushuang knew 2 of them. Sir God Qianlan and Real God Han Quan, the 2 experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace, both of them had had conflicts with him in the 8th lair in the past. Jian Wushuang had gained fame by stepping on the 2 experts' shoulders. Then, outside of Buddhist demon sea, both parties had crossed paths again. Enemies on a narrow road. Jian Wushuang looked cold. The 3 figures hailed and looked at Jian Wushuang, who was floating quietly in the air. Sir God Qianlan and Real God Han Quan quivered at the sight. Jian Wushuang. Sir God Qianlan clenched his fists. It's him. Real God Han Quan revealed a terrified expression. In the battle in the 8th lair back then, Jian Wushuang had injured Sir God Qianlan badly and captured Real God Han Quan. In the end, Soaring Heaven King Palace had paid a great price in exchange for him. Sir God Qianlan was angry with Jian Wushuang while Real God Han Quan was fearful of him. Although Real God Han Quan was also a real god and an expert in the first few places on Real God ranking list, he had no courage to fight Jian Wushuang. The flowing light that burst out from Buddhist demon sea earlier, could it be him? Sir God Qianlan muttered. Sir God Qianlan, let's go, Real God Han Quan said fearfully. Sir God Qianlan nodded faintly. He had fought with Jian Wushuang before and he had suffered a great loss. If there wasn't any reason, he naturally didn't intend to fight with Jian Wushuang again. But just as the two of them turned to leave, "Hold on," real God Ying Yun at the side, who had never spoken earlier, called them. "Sir God Qianlan, real God Han Quan, didn't the two of you realize that Jian Wushuang's aura seems to be very weak?" Real God Ying Yun said. "Weak aura?" Sir God Qianlan and real God Han Quan looked at Jian Wushuang carefully. The two of them looked and they were surprised. It was true. Jian Wushuang then, his aura was weak. To be exact, his aura was extremely weak. They could even feel that Jian Wushuang's aura might possibly vanish anytime. What happened? Sir God Qianlan creased his eyebrows. He just came out of Buddhist Demon Sea. Did he run into any danger in Buddhist Demon Sea and get severely injured? Very likely. Real God Ying Yun nodded and smiled. When he came out of Buddhist Demon Sea earlier, he didn't fly out on his own but in an uncontrollable condition. It was as though he was thrown out. If I'm not mistaken, he definitely ran into some kind of trouble in Buddhist Demon Sea and got severely injured. As for his power, it definitely decreased tremendously. Sir God Qianlan, this is a chance hard to come by for us. Sir God Qianlan's face grew cold when he heard that. The feud between Jian Wushuang and Soaring Heaven King Palace was deep-rooted. Jian Wushuang had made Soaring Heaven King Palace suffer a great loss and they had even become a laughingstock once. Such deep-seated grudge, Soaring Heaven King Palace naturally wasn't willing to let it slip, but because Jian Wushuang was extremely powerful and he had Lineage of Star as his backer, it wasn't easy to kill him. But then, they were in the 6th layer, there was no one from Lineage of Star who could come to the rescue, and Jian Wushuang was severely injured. This chance was truly hard to come by. Such a great opportunity, we shouldn't miss it. Sir God Qianlan clasped his hands together and there was light shimmering in his eyes. Han Quan, Ying Yun, the two of you retreat to a place far away. Don't let Jian Wushuang get any chance to catch the two of you. Yes, real God Han Quan and real God Ying Yun nodded. With the previous lesson of real God Han Quan's experience, the two real gods naturally retreated to somewhere far away as they were going to launch an attack. As the two real gods retreated, Sir God Qianlan walked towards Jian Wushuang slowly. "Jian Wushuang, how do you do?" Sir God Qianlan flashed a malicious smile. "I see. It's Sir God Qianlan from Soaring Heaven King Palace. We just fought not too long ago. I never thought we were going to see each other so soon." Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and he looked like he couldn't be bothered. "Why? Your previous injury recovered so quickly?" "Humph." Sir God Qianlan humped coldly. He had been severely injured by Jian Wushuang as he had been careless and it had established Jian Wushuang's name. To him, it was a humiliation. "I was careless last time. As we have met again today, I'd like to regain my name." Sir God Qianlan's voice was bright and clear. He flipped his wrist and a red rod appeared in his hand while a fierce aura soared from Sir God Qianlan's body. "Want to fight?" Jian Wushuang smirked and waved his hand. Then, two rays of golden light suddenly lit up. Chapter 1749, Endless Trouble in the Future. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two rays of brilliant golden light stopped beside Jian Wushuang and they were the two Hongjun golden swords. The two Hongjun golden swords were emitting an infinite amount of cold light and it looked as if they could attack any time. "If you wish to fight with me, you had better be prepared to die." Jian Wushuang was filled with a great amount of murderous intent. Upon seeing the two Hongjun golden swords, the corners of Sir God Qianlan's mouth became distorted. Back then, in the 8th layer, Jian Wushuang had used one Hongjun golden sword to suppress him. At present, there were two of them. This Jian Wushuang, could it be that he was not injured at all? Sir God Qianlan started to hesitate. However, his expression changed abruptly. "No, that's wrong. If he was not injured, he would definitely not say any unnecessary things to me. Instead, he would control the two Hongjun swords to kill me right away." Even though he did not do it straight away, he still took out the two golden swords. Hence, is he making an empty show of strength in order to intimidate me? After Sir God Qianlan thought to himself and understood what was going on, an enormous amount of flames of fury appeared in his eyes. He was almost intimidated by Jian Wushuang for real. "Little kid, die." Sir God Qianlan gave a furious roar, and the crimson rod in his hands swept past the area abruptly. Countless crimson waves appeared in the void at once. They then swept past the area and gathered to form a gigantic crimson rod shadow that was hundreds of feet wide instantly. The crimson red shadow was extremely huge, and it attacked Jian Wushuang immediately. Oh no! Jian Wushuang's expression changed at once. Sir God Qianlan's guess was right. He was indeed making an empty show of strength, and his objective was to get the people in front of him to retreat in the face of difficulty. As for fighting for real, his injuries were really too serious, and he probably could not even unleash 10% of his abilities. Moreover, his divine power was almost completely depleted as well. In such a state, even a chaotic real god could serve as a threat to him, let alone Sir God Qianlan. Seeing the crimson rod shadow was heading toward him, Jian Wushuang used his full power at once and controlled one Hongjun golden sword to attack. The Hongjun golden sword unleashed an impressive amount of power and clashed with the rod shadow head-on with lightning speed. Bam! With a loud sound, the Hongjun golden sword moved at an even faster speed. As for Jian Wushuang, his body shook vigorously and he spit out 3 mouthfuls of blood in succession. His aura, which was already extremely weak to begin with, fell to rock bottom at that moment. Ha ha! Jian Wushuang, you are really making an empty show of strength. Upon seeing that, Sir God Qianlan laughed loudly and his eyes became filled with a vast amount of murderous intent. Damn it! Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth tightly. In the Buddhist Demon Sea, he had experienced 4 waves of attacks from the Akron Palace successively, and he even fought a fight to the death with Emperor God Shueji. Later on, he was attacked by the ancient flood dragon. And finally, he had escaped by the skin of his teeth. However, he totally did not expect himself to actually encounter the experts of the Soaring Heaven King Palace next. Sir God Qianlan was merely a normal Sir God. If Jian Wushuang were at his peak, he could kill him easily. However, at present, a man who had lost his position and influence was subjected to indignity. The assassination by the Akron Palace as well as the Flood Dragon have been unable to kill me. Hence, how can I die in the hands of the Soaring Heaven King Palace? Jian Wushuang roared within his heart, and the remaining divine power in his body emerged again. Jian Wushuang, stop acting tough. Leave Sir God Qianlan to me and run away quickly. A deep voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind abruptly. At the same time, the skin on Jian Wushuang's body also started to wriggle madly. King of venomous worms? Jian Wushuang's heart became disturbed. Sir God Qianlan is a Sir God expert. Can you take care of him by yourself? With my current abilities, although I am not an opponent for Sir God Qianlan, I can still keep him busy for a period of time. During this period of time, you must run as far away as possible. As for me, there's no need for you to worry. The life force of a full-foot plenilune is so strong that it is beyond your expectations. Hence, a mere Sir God will be unable to kill me. As soon as his words left his mouth, countless tentacles came out of Jian Wushuang's body. The king of venomous worms' huge body also appeared in the void again. Rustle! The countless tentacles were like flittering lights, and they headed towards Sir God Qianlan with lightning speed, stopping him in his tracks as a result. What the hell is this? Sir God Qianlan revealed a stunned expression. However, even more anger emerged from him. Piss off! Boom! With a loud sound, the huge crimson rod shadow destroyed hundreds of tentacles instantly. Some of its power also spread to the king of venomous worms' body, causing the king of venomous worms to groan. However, at the next moment, even more tentacles attacked madly. King of venomous worms, I shall leave this to you. Jian Wushuang looked at the king of venomous worms deeply, and his eyes glowed with a shrill light. Soaring Heaven King Palace, I, Jian Wushuang, shall remember the debt today. In the future, if I don't eliminate the Soaring Heaven King Palace, my name, Jian Wushuang, will be written in reverse order. Just wait and see. Jian Wushuang's ice-cold voice resounded across the universe. He had already made use of his remaining divine power to escape quickly. Seeing that Jian Wushuang was running away, Sir God Qianlan as well as real God Han Quan and real God Yingyun, who were both behind him, wanted to give chase. However, they were stopped by the king of venomous worms. Damn it! Where did this worm beast come from? Since you wish to die, I shall grant you your wish." Murderous intent sprang up in Sir God Chen Lan. The power of his crimson rod then rose greatly, and many rod shadows attacked the King of Venomous Worms crazily. After undergoing a transformation, the King of Venomous Worms had awakened his close-quarters combat abilities. Moreover, it was a full-foot plenilune. Hence, it could just about serve as a threat to a normal almighty. However, after the successive great battles in the Buddhist Demon Sea, the King of Venomous Worms did not get off with light injuries either. At present, his abilities had not recovered to their peak. Furthermore, he was fighting with Sir God Chen Lan alone. Therefore, he would definitely be in a huge disadvantage. However, as his body was enormous and that his life force was exuberant, he only started to escape after fighting with Sir God Chen Lan for close to a quarter of an hour's time. Sir God Chen Lan had also given chase for a long time. However, he still allowed the King of Venomous Worms to get away in the end. At a dark void in the 6th lair, Sir God Chen Lan, Real God Han Quan and Sir God Ying Yun were gathered together. In addition, they had ugly expressions. "We have actually missed this golden opportunity." Sir God Chen Lan clenched both his fists tightly and he was filled with dissatisfaction. "It's all thanks to that worm beast from before. If not for it obstructing us, Jian Wushuang would definitely have died." Real God Han Quan snorted coldly. "The worm beast from before was very frightening," Real God Ying Yun said with a low voice. "It was very frightening. Moreover, it was not just frightening in terms of its close-quarters combat abilities. Most importantly, it had a frightening life force and ability to recover. With such a suppression by Sir God Chen Lan where he injured the worm beast continuously, he still had not managed to kill the worm beast. Instead, he could only look on as it escaped in the end. That worm beast merely has a powerful life force. However, this is not important. The most important thing is Jian Wushuang." Sir God Chen Lan squinted his eyes. "This time around, we attacked him when he was seriously injured. If we had managed to kill him, then there would be no problem. However, since he's not dead, the Soaring Heaven King Palace will have endless trouble in the future." Chapter 1750. Palace Master escorted in the dark void at the border of Buddhist Demon Sea. Jian Wushuang, who was fleeing, finally stopped on a dark ground. "I can't continue to run anymore." Jian Wushuang looked around himself. "It's because I am at the border of Buddhist Demon Sea. It would be difficult to run into any star demon. But if I were to continue to run forward, there's an 80% chance that I will run into one. Star demon. Star demons in the 6th lair. Besides the 4-horned star demons that were extremely rare and only lived in the dangerous place, almost nothing else could pose a threat to Jian Wushuang. However, it was when Jian Wushuang was at his zenith. To Jian Wushuang then, even a crimson 3-horned star demon was vital. He didn't dare to move around in the 6th lair then. It was most crucial for him to quickly recover his situation. "My injury is too serious and my power has reached an all-time low. It will be impossible for me to recover in a short period of time. Plus, the 6th lair isn't a place to recover," Jian Wushuang muttered and immediately took out a token to send a message to Hall Master Yuan. "Jian Wushuang, Palace Master has already arrived in the 6th lair. I will send your location to him. He will be with you in no time. Besides, Hall Master Jiu Xin has already escaped from Buddhist Demon Sea," Hall Master Yuan replied. "Palace Master came?" Jian Wushuang stunned. From what he knew, the Master of Star Palace had always been meditating in seclusion. Plus, the meditation then seemed to be extremely important. Hence, even when Jian Wushuang had become a Hall Master and threw a banquet, the Master of Star Palace never appeared. But then, Palace Master was already liberated from seclusion. The moment he found out that you were assassinated in Buddhist Demon Sea, he immediately rushed over, Hall Master Yuan said. "I see." Jian Wushuang was touched. "Jian Wushuang, just wait for a moment," Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang nodded and immediately sat down. He flipped his hand and there were a bunch of elixirs in his hand. The elixirs were extremely precious. Even a Sir God would value them highly. However, Jian Wushuang ate all the elixirs as though he was eating beans. He took in more than 10 of them in one go. Then, he continued to treat his injury as he waited. Very soon, a maroon figure got closer to Jian Wushuang. The maroon figure belonged to King of Venomous Worms. He was connected to Jian Wushuang by heart and blood. They could feel the existence of one another. Then, King of Venomous Worms immediately snuck into Jian Wushuang's body. King of Venomous Worms, are you okay? Jian Wushuang asked. I got injured and I need some time to recover, but it's nothing major, King of Venomous Worms said. Jian Wushuang let out a breath of relief when he heard the news. The time flew past. Jian Wushuang waited for 10 days in silence. Then, the Master of Star Palace and Hall Master Ji Yuxin arrived. When Jian Wushuang saw the Master of Star Palace and Hall Master Ji Yuxin, he was finally at ease. Jian Wushuang, your injury. The Master of Star Palace squinted his eyes. He could feel that Jian Wushuang's aura was extremely weak. I am badly injured, but I am alive, Jian Wushuang smiled weakly. What happened in Buddhist Demon Sea? Where's Lei Chao? Hall Master Ji Yuxin asked. Let's talk about this when we return, Jian Wushuang said. The Master of Star Palace nodded faintly. Then, the three of them returned to Lineage of Star. Although Jian Wushuang was badly injured, he consumed some elixirs and recovered some divine power during the 10 days when he was waiting for the Master of Star Palace and Hall Master Ji Yuxin. He could afford to simply fly. With the Master of Star Palace escorting personally, the journey back was smooth. The three of them arrived in Lineage of Star very soon. In the lair of Lineage of Star, in a lofty palace. The Master of Star Palace was seated on the uppermost of the palace while Jian Wushuang, Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Ji Yuxin sat on their respective seats. As for Hall Master Nai Yun, he remained in the 5th lair and never came out. In the lofty palace then, it was dead silent. The 4 experts looked at the dead body in the middle of the hall and their faces looked icy. The dead body was naturally Lei Chao's. Lei Chao, I killed him myself. Jian Wushuang's voice was deep and there was pain in his eyes. The three of them heard him but never intended to reprimand Jian Wushuang. I also know about soul control technique. Once a person is soul controlled, they don't stand a chance to shake it off. It basically means the person is dead. With you killing him, it is simply giving him a true relief. If I were you, I would have done the same, the Master of Star Palace said. Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Ji Yuxin nodded solemnly. Lei Chao was an expert of Lineage of Star. Before Jian Wushuang rose up, he was the number 1 among real gods in Lineage of Star. They shared a great relationship. Lei Chao had died and they were all in pain. However, if they were Jian Wushuang, they definitely would do that same as Jian Wushuang to give Lei Chao relief. Bury him. To outsiders, tell them that he ran into danger and accidentally fallen when he wandered in the 6th lair, the Master of Star Palace said. Yes, Hall Master Yuan nodded and he waved to keep Lei Chao's body into Qian Kuan Ring. Everyone reigned in their agony and the Master of Star Palace looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, tell us what happened in Buddhist Demon Sea, the Master of Star Palace said. Jian Wushuang nodded, then he started telling the ins and outs of the story. He didn't hide anything about his experience in Buddhist Demon Sea. He talked about everything that he should. From the beginning when he had first arrived at the Triangle Island where Lei Chao was, to the first killer move he encountered, which was the assassination carried out by the ugly-looking lady. He also shared his judgment. When they heard of the first and second killer moves that Akron Palace had prepared, the three of them still remained calm. However, the moment they found out about Akron Palace's third move, Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Ji Yuxin stood on their feet. The 5 powerful Sir Gods teamed up and set up the killing formation of 9 cuts. Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Ji Yuxin's eyes were wide. They knew about the killing formation of 9 cuts too, and it was set up by 5 Sir Gods. Under normal circumstances, anyone lower than an Emperor God stood almost no chance to stay alive. However, Jian Wushuang had forcefully dissolved the killing formation of 9 cuts and killed one of them. Such power! Even the top Sir God wouldn't be able to do that. After I broke the killing formation of 9 cuts and killed Lei Chao, I met another person. The person was the 4th killer move that Akron Palace prepared for me. Jian Wushuang continued. He was in a crimson robe and he was using a crimson trident. He was already in the realm of Emperor God. Emperor God? Then, even the Master of Star Palace looked shocked. An emperor god using a crimson trident? It's Emperor God Xue Jiyu. The master of Star Palace pounded the table and stood up in anger. There was murderous intention in his eyes. As for Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Jiyu Xin, they were terrified and they were also raging with anger.